Unfictional stories. Sooner or later, it happens to everyone. These are the letters no one expected to write.
I want to say something about Paris first, because it matters to the story. I had wanted to live there since I was 17. Not the tourist version, not the Eiffel Tower and the Seine at golden hour, but the actual city. The arrondissements that don't appear on postcards. The smell of old stone and coffee and exhaust in the morning. The specific quality of Parisian light in October that makes everything look like it's been painted rather than photographed. I was 22. I was studying contemporary art. And when the exchange programme accepted me, I cried in the university bathroom for about 4 minutes and then pulled myself together and called my mother. I say this because I need you to understand how much I wanted it to be perfect, and how hard I worked for the first few weeks to convince myself that it was. The apartment was on the 5th floor of a building in the 11th arrondissement. No lift. Narrow stairs that turned twice before you reached my door. The kind of building that has absorbed 100 years of other people's lives into its walls. You could feel it, literally, in the way the floorboards moved under your feet, in the thickness of the silence at 3 a.m. I loved it immediately. I loved the high ceiling and the single tall window and the radiator that clanked to life every evening like an old man settling into a chair. I loved that it smelled like somewhere that had a history. The first time something was wrong, I didn't register it as wrong. I'd left my sketchbook on the kitchen table before a lecture. I was certain of this. I remembered putting it there, remembered thinking I should take it with me and deciding not to. I came home and it was on the desk in the main room. I stood there for a moment looking at it. Then I picked it up and sat down and did not think about it again. I am, by nature, an organised person. My mother would laugh at that. She'd say I'm organised about the things I care about and completely chaotic about everything else, which is probably accurate. But my work, my materials, my books, I know where I put them. I have always known where I put them. So when it started happening regularly, I noticed. Not immediately. It took maybe 3 weeks before I couldn't explain it away anymore. The coffee mug I left by the sink on the windowsill when I came back. The jacket on the hook behind the door, folded on the chair. A library book I'd left open on the bed, closed and moved to the shelf. Small things. Domestic things. The kind of things that could, individually, be explained by tiredness or distraction or simply misremembering. But I wasn't misremembering. I knew I wasn't misremembering. The problem was that I couldn't prove it. Not to anyone else, and increasingly not to myself. That's the part that was hardest. The self-doubt. I'd been in a new city for a month, sleeping badly, working hard, navigating everything in a second language. The reasonable explanation was obvious. I was exhausted and distracted, and my memory was unreliable. I told myself this seriously, carefully, the way you tell yourself something you need to be true. I almost believed it. The sounds were hard to explain away. Not dramatic sounds, not footsteps or voices, or anything that belongs in a different kind of story. Just the specific sound of a floorboard under weight. Once or twice a week, always at night, always from the main room when I was in bed. A single creak, deliberate sounding, like someone shifting their weight from one foot to the other. Old building, I told myself. Timber expands and contracts. It settles. I looked this up. Timber does expand and contract. Buildings do settle. I read about it carefully and thoroughly at 2 a.m. on my phone with the bedroom door closed and the light on. I left the light on quite a lot after that. The drawings were the last thing. I found them in February, 2 months before my course ended. I was pulling away a strip of wallpaper near the window that had been peeling since I moved in. I'd been meaning to tell the landlord, kept forgetting. Underneath the wallpaper, on the plaster, there were drawings. Children's drawings, done in pencil. A building. Possibly this building. The proportions were right. Stick figures in the windows. A figure on the roof. And in the corner, small and careful, a date. I stood there for a long time. I took photographs. I told myself it was interesting, historically interesting, the kind of thing that happens in old Parisian buildings, layers of other lives showing through. I reapplied the strip of wallpaper with tape, and I didn't tell anyone, and I didn't pull back any more of it. I finished my course in April. I packed my things carefully, returned my keys, carried my suitcase down the 5 flights of stairs for the last time. On the street, I looked up at the window of my apartment, 5th floor, the single tall window, and felt very clearly the particular relief of leaving somewhere you have wanted to leave for longer than you admitted. I've been home for 7 months now. My keys are always where I left them. My books stay where I put them. I sleep without leaving the light on. I don't know what was happening in that apartment. I've thought about it seriously. A neighbour with access, the landlord, someone I wasn't aware of. I've thought about old buildings and the way they move and settle and breathe. I've thought about exhaustion and second languages and the particular vulnerability of being somewhere new and alone. What I know is this. I am home, in my own country, in an apartment I've lived in for 3 years. Nothing moves. Nothing creaks at night. My sketchbook is always on the table where I left it. Whatever it was there. It wasn't me. That took longer to be sure of than it should have.
You just heard one story. There are hundreds more. Ordinary people, unexplained moments, real letters. If something happened to you, something you've never quite been able to explain to yourself or anyone else, we're collecting those stories. Email us or use the form on our website. Everything in the description below. Unfictional stories. New episode every week. Sooner or later, you'll have a story too.